Hi, fellow birdies. Welcome to another edition of Mr. Songbird's Ryan Mukbang. It's good to see you folks. How have you been? I've had a rather interesting week, but I started by, as I mentioned over the weekend, I made a poll to see what the first book I should read in my reviews is. And I went for a horror one this time. Now, I'm going to avoid spoilers, especially because with this kind of novel, spoiling it pretty much basically tells you the entire plot, kind of thing. This is a recipe that Crystal and I found this past week. It's very simple. Slow cooker meal. Just need some tomato juice, some veggies, and hot dog pieces. And I think like one or two other things, but it's all very easy to make, and it's amazing. Like this week, I decided to try like 5 new things because my normal standbys were becoming a little bit too samey from week to week. So I decided to try something new. Personally, I'm a fan of having my soups rather thick and plentiful stuff inside. Now, I want to use this book that I'm going to be discussing to talk about writing techniques. Now, there's a lot of important things that we've gone over previously, such as description. I want to tell you a bit about what this book does right and what doesn't do so right. Almond milk. Now, this book is one of those, and actually it's from the 1920s and 30s. It's very well written once you get past the beginning. Like once I got past the first 20, like first fifth of it or so, it was smooth sailing to the end. I finished the whole thing in like the whole rest of it in like a few hours this morning. Well, a couple hours this morning and afternoon, really. The main weakness is, and probably the reason it never became a bestseller, spoilers, because not really spoilers, but it's almost 100 years old, so we'd know if it was. The writers are very skilled, and once they got out of the slow beginning, they really hit their stride. But the beginning is definitely hurt them, I feel. Here's how. First, I want to talk to you about a certain writing technique, and it's actually about just paragraphs, paragraph length specifically. Now, we don't think about that too often unless we're like writing a text message and it's like, hello, wall of text. A wall of text is just as bad in a published novel because, how should I put this? It's very hard to read through. Like it, if you take the same information but block it off in smaller paragraphs, it becomes vastly easier to read because you can keep track of like where you are easily. Whereas it's very possible when reading a large paragraph to get kind of lost where you were in that paragraph after reread a couple times just to make sure you get the whole thing. And that is one flaw that this book had in the beginning. Once you got past that first bit, all these giant paragraphs went away, but for the first bit, like every other page had a page-long paragraph. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is description. I've just said quite a bit, obviously, but here's how should I put this? They did a fantastic job in describing everything. Like I will not, fault them for that. The one mistake they made is of their main character at the beginning of the book. And this is something I see a lot of, and especially amateur fiction. They have a big description of the main character right at the beginning. Like, and in this case, what made it particularly jarring is the character was actually describing it while talking to herself in a mirror, which is an interesting design choice. The readers don't actually need to know much about your character's description. Like, in my own book, you know very little about the main character's description until, I'd say, roughly the second chapter, because it's not as important as what he does and what he thinks, as he is the viewpoint. It's like, do you ever look at a pair of binoculars and think, well, let me think about what that new one looks like. Is that one the right shade? No. You're looking through the binoculars. And that's how the main character usually is. The main character is the binoculars through which we see the story. Not to say that you won't eventually describe them, but it's not a pressing issue. Now, the other issue that I had with that particular book, at the beginning, a lot of the language was hard to read. And in hindsight, I suspect that part of it's just because it was written in the 1920s and 30s, when a lot of things that we've never even heard of were commonplace. So I can't exactly blame them too much for that. But I will say this: generally, when you're writing, you want to keep it easy to read. Like, if a middle schooler would have difficulty reading your book, or what's a middle schooler? If a high school student would have difficulty reading your book, it's too hard to read. Anything past roughly the 8th grade level is probably too high. And honestly, I'd probably go lower than that, like 6th or 7th or 5th grade even. I mean, you don't want to be like the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog by any means. But you want it to be easy for the readers to read. This is definitely going to go on my favorites list. I love this soup. I'm going to put a link to the description below. Feel free to check it out and eat it and make it, and you'll love it. Well, make it, then eat it. One of the reasons I like the horror genre more than a lot of other genres is because, how should I put it, especially with darker stories, horror especially, but in all darker genres, they're much more willing to play for keeps with the protagonist. Like, in the average adventure book, although, bad things may threaten to happen to the main character, you can be pretty sure that they're going to survive to the end and, win the day. It's not really much of a spoiler there for most stories. Instead, the real fear and the real danger is more of like they could lose, but you kind of know they're not going to. It's the other people around them that are more likely to suffer and die. Like in Harry Potter, you knew that Harry was going to probably win the day. The only question was how and who else would die around him. That's because of what's called plot armor. It's a colloquialism, I suppose, term is. Basically refers to that concept that even though they may be in a dangerous situation, they're not in the same danger as a regular nobody would be in. Like, and here's what I mean by that. Imagine if the end of the chapter had the character being shot twice in the back. If the character was a nobody and not even a side character, you wouldn't even expect to bother checking the body. You're sure they're dead. If it's a main character, you're probably expecting the main character to pull through. Maybe by the skin of their teeth, but they will pull through. And that's why I like horror and dark stories so much, because they are willing to ravage, ruin, and not just like emotionally or economically or what have you, but they're actually willing to plain flat out kill off the main characters. As an example, one of my favorite plot twists ever. I'm not going to say it much. I'll just say 2 words: Red Wedding. Now, this was a horror story I read. So my question is, would you like me to continue with the horror for another week? I'll probably take the second place vote this time, because although it's not traditional horror, it's highly rated, and frankly the concept has me all kinds of curious. Like, it looks to be like totally black comedy. But I will let you decide. Please let me know in the comments below. And until then, I wish you a wonderful day and look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye, fellow birdies.